It's okay. Whether I do or not doesn't really matter. Wow, cool. Maynard shows up. He's reliable because he's a professional. Right, Maynard? Is this your new camera?
No, it's the old one.
What happened with the new one?
My computer doesn't like the video.
Tragic.
So this is a more expensive one. This is a broadcast.
Good.
I didn't want to bring up broadcast.
Yeah, because Channel 3 might not get it. Are we good? Oh, okay, good. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Welcome. Good to see you again. Some of you today already. Let's see. I was going to tell you a story today. I'll try not to get too far off track, although that is my method. I go way off track, and then I'll get around back to it eventually. But basically, it's about one day in my life. Because if you already think I'm weird, you ain't heard nothing yet. So, Maynard, can I move this out of my crack?
No. Yeah, okay.
I understand. Where'd you get the money? Okay, and a little bit of background. It's an old story, but it's worthy. When I came to California in 1968, my first stop, aside from staying at a friend's house, my first house was in Larkspur. If you don't know where that is, it's about 10 miles north of San Francisco. It's got the best weather in marvelous Marin. It's right underneath Mount Tamalpais. Good way to describe it might be that if you wanted to go to the top of Mount Tam, you would have to go through Mill Valley, Tennessee Valley, or Fairfax. Hour and a half. If you wanted to go to the top of Mount Tam from Larkspur, 20 minutes on foot. No roads, nothing. You can go straight up. The whole center of Marin County is the water district. There's lakes. It's all the drinking water from Marin. Larkspur was a wonderful place to live in 1968. My neighbors right below me, Jerry Garcia lived, and then right behind him, Janis Joplin lived. So it was a good neighborhood. Larkspur was a funny place. It was the old road that went through before the highway through Marin, and that's Magnolia. And then they have the Madrone Canyon, where they've left the redwoods in the middle of the road, and you have to drive around them. That's the Madrone Canyon. It's an excellent place. That's where I lived, and until I was evicted. And then I came up to Mendocino to try to retrieve a stolen car, which I was semi-successful with. And then I lived out at Valpowix Ranch, for those of you who know history here, you know what that is, until we got into an argument one day, and he was screaming at me, and I said, I really hate people screaming at me. If you want me to leave, just say so. He said, leave. I went, cool, and left. And went back down to Marin, and I ran into my ex-next-door neighbor, whose name was Jerry Berryhill. We called him Jerry Berry. It's the first gay couple I knew, my next-door neighbors, probably ever. And he was a really nice guy. And I ran into him in Marin. He said, where are you staying? I said, I have no idea. He said, come stay at the house. I said, okay, cool. I went to his house, which was right next to my first house in Marin. And at the time, some of my friends that I had introduced him to were staying at his house. They were kind of living all over him. He was easy to take advantage of if that's what you wanted to do. And early in my stay there, one of my buddies named Skyfish, some of you might remember the band Skyfish from up here, had nothing to do with him, except that I told a friend of mine, Bugs Anderson, who was in that band, about my friend Skyfish, and he said, oh, that's a great name for a band. And I said, no, it's not a great name for a band, because he named himself that after watching a bird plunge into the ocean at high speed, pick up a fish, and take off again. And I said, a skyfish is a dead fish. So it's not that great a name. My friend's a loser, blah, blah, blah. He went for it anyway, thought, great name, and he found out I was right on the day before they had their big break when their lead guitarist died on their way, or almost on their way. Fun. Anyway, Skyfish at the house, he was kind of taking over the lead in the house, helping Jerry Berry pay the rent. And he asked me for some rent. And I said, sorry, I don't have anything. I don't have any money. And when I say I don't have any money, that means I don't have change. I don't have a dollar. I don't have anything. I don't have any money. And apparently, a lot of people say, I'm broke. But there's a big variety there. And so I told him, I don't have it. Sorry, I'd love to help. Can't. And I had no plans on getting any money. In those days, it was kind of the lilies of the field. Neither do they spin nor toil. Yet I say unto you that even Solomon in his finest threads never looked so good. Biblical stuff, really important. And so he kept asking me. And I kept saying, man, I don't know what to tell you. I will make a contribution to the household if you want. This is all I have. And I reached in my pocket, and I had a baggie with about 200 hits of LSD in it. And they were very strong hits of LSD. They were not disco hits or whatever they call them nowadays. They were nasty. You would leave your body and die and get reborn, that kind of stuff. And I said, and you guys are welcome, everybody in the house, you're welcome to all you want. I'll show you where I stashed them. And it was double bagged, and I just crumpled it up and threw it out the front door into the bushes. Seemed as good a place as any. And nobody ever took any, except me and my friends. Probably smart, who knows. In any case, I got sick of the asking me to help out, and I decided to build a house. I used to go back in the woods and do my version of meditating, which is kind of just sitting there thinking about whatever I was thinking about. And there was a really nice place. A big acacia tree had fallen down and made like a perfect thing from the land out to it. And I thought, there's the foundation for a house. I'll build a house there. I had no money or anything, but my friend Jerry Berry, I would just drive him to work every day, and he'd give me his car. It always had gas, and I'd go around to building sites in Marin where there were tremendous amounts of waste because the builders in Marin, after a job, had nowhere to take the leftovers, all their wood, all their stuff, and they didn't care if I went and just took it. And so I'd load up loads of it every day, or if I'd walk by people's houses and see storm windows in their garage, I'd knock on their door and say, do you want those storm windows? And they'd say, no, get them out of there. Oh, there's also some plywood in the backyard or something. Plywood was a tough one. But I was building this house, and while I was building it, I noticed there was a house. My landlord had owned 3 houses in a group there, and every day I'd hear these people singing and laughing all day long. And I never knew what they were doing until they showed up one day. That's another story. I don't think I'm going to go there. Reliable people. Anyway, so I was building a house, and I was just about done with this house. Plywood was tough, windows easy, so it was mostly a glass house in the woods. It had a loft and stuff, and I was just about done with it, but I kind of hated it because my friend Skyfish used to I'd be carrying some giant, beam up the very steep. The Larkspur Canyon had steep walls and stuff, and then you'd go up from there. And so I'd be carrying like a beam, looked like, Jesus, struggling with something. And he'd sit on the front porch and laugh at me. And I thought, oh, you asshole, I'd help a stranger carry something up a hill. And so I felt like I was kind of building a monument to my insecurity instead of just saying, fuck you, get off my back. I just kept building. And it was just about done. And one day I'm there with my, hammer and saw, and I hear a voice behind me say, do you know whose property this is? And I turn around, and it's the building inspector from Larkspur. And I said, No, I have no idea. And he said, well, you can't just build a house anywhere you want. And I said, cool. And I like threw down my hammer and saw and started to walk away. And he went, well, wait, I know who owns this property. And I said, it's okay, man. I hate this place. Let's go. And after that, he always treated me very respectfully. When I'd see him in town, he'd always say hello and stuff. But he didn't really get it at all. And I thought, well, I'm free. Now I'm free. I don't have to worry about all these mundane little things. So at which point, every day, I didn't really have any food or money, as I said. So I'd wait for my friends to all go to work. And then I would go in the house and take 4 almonds and 5 raisins and the top of the peanut butter jar, and et cetera. Things like that I thought would go unnoticed. But I did find that LSD was also a very good, as well as a hallucinogenic, a good appetite suppressant. And so I just would take a couple of my big hits, and they were big, and throw them in some ketchup bottle I found in the woods, and leave it on the sink, and I would get up in the morning and get off that, and then throughout the day, just keep going. And by evening, things were kind of creamy. I lived in this half and half world of like walking through half and half. That's what I mean by that. It was very creamy reality. All lights had purple halos around them. It was nice. But I was done with all that now. So I decided, I think I took like 2 of these major hits of LSD and decided it's probably time to go up to the top of Mount Tam, which was where I thought the end of the world party probably had already started, and I was probably late. Not unusual. And why I went through Fairfax instead of just going straight up, I have no idea. But I did. I walked out to Fairfax and started going up Bolinas Road, which is a 13-mile trip once you get up to the ridge there across to Mount Tam. But I just started to walk. I was going out of Fairfax. I don't know how many miles I was out of Fairfax going up the hill when the rushes started to hit me like really hard. If you're familiar with them, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, there's no way to explain it. Except they were really hitting hard, and I stopped beside the road, and I looked beside the road. It was like very steep hillside, but all of a sudden something changed in me. I call it faceting. It's like when you're looking through a diamond or something. Faceting, like facets of a diamond. It's like when everything you look and everything changes a little bit, or however much it changes. And I was looking over the side of this mountain when these rushes were hitting me, and I faceted. And instead of seeing a very steep mountainside, I saw a desert in front of me with shrubs and rocks and blah, blah, little trees and stuff. And it looked flat, and I thought, oh, I had this tremendous rush of energy, and I wanted to run across the desert as fast as I could. So I did. But it wasn't a desert. It was straight down the side of a mountain. And it was a pretty serious crash and burn. I didn't get knocked out or anything that time. And when I got down to the bottom, I was really surprised by all that. I wasn't expecting that, you know, in the desert. And then when I got my head together enough to realize, oh, I just fucked up. Okay, I heard a Volkswagen coming down the mountain. It's like, brr, 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 like that. And I thought, oh my God, I got to meet the Volkswagen. Why? No idea. But I had this tremendous sense of urgency to get back up the hill, meet the Volkswagen. But I couldn't really climb the hill. It was kind of like rocks and stuff, and I wasn't going anywhere. But it was getting closer, and I realized, oh my, I've got to meet it. And so at some point I just went, okay, you got to be a squirrel or something, and I just like clawed my way up the side. And as soon as I broke the top, this Volkswagen comes around the corner and stops. And I don't know what to expect. I just know I was supposed to meet it. And out of the passenger side, somebody gets out who I knew from Mendocino. Somebody I've never seen in a car or anything. He used to come out to my studio and trade me. He knew that I always had bullets because I used them in my art. And he lived out in the woods. He hunted, and he dealt in deer things. like hides, horns, buttons, things he would make out of deer stuff. And so he would come and trade me that stuff. I'd give him bullets, and out he would go. And the only other person I know that used to trade with him was John Knever, who's like my manager, roommate, whatever. That manager, that's a new thing I came up with yesterday. I decided I'm trying to think of some way to describe him. That seemed like as close as I could get. Anyway, he's not here. He would never come to something like this. But he's heard all these stories anyway. In any case, so I see this guy, and I've never seen him in a car or anything, and he just comes walking across the street towards me, and I'm like confused. I'm beyond verbal at this point. I don't think I could say a word. But he comes walking over to me, and he like looks deep into my eyes, and I'm still trying to figure out what's he doing here. And then he takes out a pack of matches, and he lights a match in front of my eyes. And I look at the match, and I mean, I can still verbalize to myself, but I'm going like, oh, match, fire, burn, joint. Oh, joint. We could smoke a joint together. But it was in my backpack when I jumped off the mountain. But I can go get it. And I turned around and jumped off the mountain again. And that was a little more severe. I got knocked out on that one. I must hit my head. I sometimes wondered, did any of that really happen? I don't know. It sure seemed like it. It seemed as real as this. And when I woke up, it was night. It was this was afternoon when all this went down. So now it's nighttime. And I woke up and I was kind of disoriented. And then it was kind of like my body was taken over, like I was a puppet. And my body just like popped up into like a lotus position, basically, which is, a yoga position, where you should be sitting on a cushion because your legs should be below your body when you're doing it. And the mountain was perfect for that. And I had to like grab my foot or something. And I went into a lotus position wondering, what is this all about? And as the rushes began rumbling in and just tumbling over me, and then my first real thought after that was, God, you're really dumb. You were supposed to blow out the match. It was some Buddhist ritual of the rat, the match being, desire, the fires of desire, and you have to blow out the desires to become enlightened and stuff like that. And I thought, you're so dumb. You should have just blown out the goddamn match instead of jumping off the mountain again. And so I'm sitting there, and I start noticing all these things happening to my body that were very strange. I'd never felt them. It felt a lot like somebody giving me very deep tissue massage in my back, going deep in and moving muscles around. I could feel muscles moving around and stuff. I had no idea what it was about. Didn't really hurt, didn't feel great, anything like that. It just was weird. And then all of a sudden, it would be like my back just changed. And I felt like my back just straightened out. It got straighter, and everything became a little more clear. And I thought, wow, that was heavy. And then it kept happening. And every time it would happen, I'd get this moment where it would just like, ping! And then I'd feel like my back is straighter. It's getting straighter and straighter. I don't know what this is about, but it's kind of cool. And then I began to think, oh, you know what, all this stuff, what I thought it might be was throughout our lives, you have experiences that you tend to stuff away inside you. Somebody goes to hit you or something like that, and you go, fuck. And you can crystallize a little piece of that fear or something in you. And eventually, what happens, we have body memories and stuff, is your body will record that image and might start to grow on that crystal. And your posture changes very slightly with that kind of experience. It's usually fear-based. And I had a feeling, oh, that's what's happening. That's why my back's getting straighter and straighter and straighter. And then on the last one of them, it got very straight. And I had what they describe as a Kundalini yoga experience. And it felt like a bolt of lightning came straight out of the center of the earth, went straight up my spine, into my brain, and just exploded. My brain just turned into white light. I was gone from this universe. It was like a whole other universe. And that's about the best I can describe it. But then I began to see images. And I noticed, I didn't realize yet the order of the images, but I started re-experiencing things in my life I'd experienced, starting with the softest noises I'd ever heard, which started off with like the blood rushing through my mom's body while I was in her womb. And then her heartbeat, the boom, boom, boom. And then I'd hear, and the noises built. They were on a building thing, and then I'd hear like my own heartbeat. And then, eventually the leaves through the dry aspen leaves and stuff like that. And I realized, this is weird. I'm dumping all the images I've ever intaked. And then I remembered they used to say a drowning man sees his life pass before his eyes when he's drowning. And I always thought that was like a movie running backwards or something, hard to get a concept for that. But then I realized, I kind of get it. Everything that comes in has to come out. And that's what was happening. Was all these images were coming out. They were all memories of sounds I'd heard, and they were building. And they built up to a huge crescendo of sounds, atom bombs, machine guns, motorcycles, fuel dragsters, things like that. And then, bam, I was out. And then I was in this quiet space and realized, wow, that was heavy. And then more of the same, emotions, whatever, all sensory stuff. And so I just kept re-experiencing my life. And then I realized, okay, I'm a vessel, and it needs to be emptied. If I'm going to be reborn, be reborn, you have to die. To die, you have to get rid of all your past life, all your images go. And that's what I realized I thought was happening. And the last set of images that I saw was what I assumed was all the lives I'd ever lived, all the faces I'd ever worn. There were animals, there were people, all races represented, all species represented. And it's kind of like the Jimi Hendrix album cover where you see all the faces all the way up to Godhead, where you've got Krishna or whoever it is, whatever God's, for sale that week. And so I realized I saw all these faces I'd ever worn, but I realized that underneath, no matter what it looked like or what race or what animal or anything, it always had my face. What that meant, I wasn't really sure what it had meant, except I thought about, okay, the Japanese, the worst thing you can do is to lose face. It's suicide material. And so I thought, okay, well, that made sense. And as it came up into that, and then I experiencing all these faces kind of like as a big rush, and I came slamming into what I thought was my face. I thought, oh, okay, good, I'm back. But then I could feel my face, and I realized, oh, no, I'm not Japanese. Because I felt I was distinctly a Japanese face. And I thought, what? I don't get it at all. And so I opened my third eye or whatever, and to see, what am I seeing here? And I saw what looked like a dashboard. And also, somewhere in here, I'd been hearing all these very kind of binary musical sounding stuff that sounded very conversational, kind of like archetype speaking, like God talking to Buddha or Jesus talking to somebody. And I didn't really have good images for it, but it sounded like that. And what they were discussing, I had no idea, but it sounded like maybe they're talking about steering the universe or something. I didn't know. But anyway, I'm wondering, why have I got a Japanese face? That's really weird. And so when I open my eyes and I see gauges and switches and things, and I thought, what the fuck? Where am I? In the engine compartment of the universe or something? And it didn't make any sense to me. And then I felt my second facet of the day, which was I felt the switch, and everything turned a little bit, kind of like it had earlier in the day. And when it turned, the dashboard went down, and I saw over the dashboard, and I was looking at an American aircraft carrier. And I thought, oh, this looks familiar. And I thought, oh, I see, I even have a little bit of choice left here as to where I'm going to hit it. And I was in a plane and going at an American aircraft carrier and thought, okay, I could just try and hit the side, no biggie, hit the flight deck, take it out of action for an hour, take out personnel, better. And so I aimed at the tower as much as I had any control over anything. And as I'm screaming into the tower, I'm being enveloped in a darkness like I had never even remembered. It was just pure like death and darkness. And I remember the last image that I saw was the American flag, and I went, there's my ticket to America for the psychedelic age. And I died. It was a fairly severe death, and I thought, but my prize is, I still had the memory of, this incarnation, and I knew I was in the psychedelic age. And so it seemed like, okay, you won a prize. You took a death consciously, and that's your prize. And I thought, worth it, yahoo. And so when that death occurred, something can't really describe, no explanation for or anything, but it felt like somebody reached down my throat, grabbed my heart, and ripped it right out of my mouth. And I turned inside out. It's a very strange feeling, as you might imagine. And everything, the noise is cacophonous and shit when this kind of stuff happens. It's just, it's like another drug, DMT, very similar. And I realized, that I had died, and also it was kind of like had a boing effect to it. And I realized that I had seen it wasn't until later that I realized I'd heard the next day. Time is a joke in these kind of states. It's an illusion or something, whatever. I mean, we know it has some substance because there's no space without time, no time without space, blah, blah, blah. So they are connected. But this was strange, and these things, as the next day progressed, I realized I knew what sounds I was supposed to hear next. Because I was waiting for them. But as it was, I had died, and I was waiting to be reborn. I'm sitting on the side of the hill. I'm wearing about what I'm wearing now, maybe not even this much, and I'm cold. It's a wet Marin night, and I'm kind of freezing and waiting for dawn, waiting for the sun to hit me so I can start my new life, whatever it is to be. And I'm waiting, and as the darkness turns into deep blue, into gray, steely thing, and I keep thinking, and then you hear the first bird chirp and shit like that, and stuff like that, and I keep waiting, like, where's the sun? I'm really cold. And I'm waiting for the sun and waiting. It's getting lighter and lighter out. And I'm waiting, and I'm like, what the fuck? Where's the sun? I'm really cold. And then I realized, you're on the north side of a hill, dumbass. and the sun will never, ever hit you, no matter how long you sit here. And I thought, well, there's a good metaphor. You have to start your own life. You can't wait for the sun to come and start your life. You better go start your own life. And I thought, okay, cool, I'll go up to the sun. And then I looked up the top of the mountain. I could see, oh, yeah, there's some sun up there. Cool. And so I had to negotiate getting up the side of this hill, which was hard, but I made it. And I got up to the top there, and I thought, well, I started out for Mount Tam, may as well continue on. And so I started going up the road, and the sun was the most glorious thing I'd ever felt. It was just so warm and lovely. I was happy. And I was happy enough that I'd started to run. I thought, oh, this feels great. And I started running, and I was running up the middle of the road, and then I thought, oh, I'm starting to, I don't know if it's getting sweaty or whatever, but I thought, it's getting hotter. I like the heat, but it's too hot. And I took off my shirt and threw it away. And then I'm running up the road, and I thought, I should take off my pants, but, I have a feeling that will get me arrested. I think I may have already lost my shoes at this point. I don't remember the shoes. But I thought, you should take off your pants, but, that's going to get you arrested. Maybe not. Maybe if they're supposed to come off, they'll fall off. So I kept running up the road, and sure enough, another half a mile or so up the road, I noticed, I think I had a tie or a piece of string or something holding my pants up. And I noticed, there they go. They're starting to go down, and they're going to trip me soon if I don't stop. And so I stopped, and I took them off and threw them away and headed back up the road. And probably somewhere in the next mile, the fear hit me. It was like, oh God, this is definitely going to end you up in jail. And I thought, I need a sign. And I'm sort of asking, God or whatever it is, the universe. I'm just saying, I need a sign. I need a sign. This is really scary. And then I looked up, and there were two birds that were flying. I'm going right in the middle of the road, and there were two birds right above me, and they were crisscrossing, going right with me. And I went, good enough for me. Cool. And kept on going up the road, and the birds are flying with me. And then I went by the Meadow Club, which is up there the back way, and that's people who are like putting saddles on horses and getting ready to play golf up there and stuff. And me running by, I'm also imitating the birds now. I got my arms up in the air, and I'm kind of like flapping my arms at the birds, and I'm going up the road, and I thought, oh, this could be a problem. Well, who cares? And I just kept going up the road, and I'm seeing these people like standing there with their mouths open. And I kept going up the road, but it was still glorious. It was sunny and beautiful, and I felt great. And until I went around a curve, and I hit the shade, and there was no sun in the shade, and I just froze in my tracks, and it was like, oh, not the cold again. Oh, God. And then I noticed, as I was standing there, these very slight movements it was like, what I'm hearing is like a radio in the background. So when you're trying to tune a radio and you hear it kind of going like, wee, like that, like trying to find a station. And then I noticed it, like, as I would turn a little bit, I could hear it. It's kind of like I was trying to tune in a station. So I just kept turning a little bit, and finally I felt it like, bang, I hit a station. And when I did, it was like I just got turned on, and I felt like I had been like a television set sitting in the corner of a room in a house for 20 years, and somebody just walked in the room and hit the button and turned me on. And now I'm like, the clarity is a very interesting thing. It's not, I don't really know how to describe it, but you can see through layers of reality. We think of our reality as each other, whatever it is, but there are many, many realities going on at all times. Occasionally you may get a glimpse of one, or several, or a whole bunch. In any case, the one that I glimpsed at this moment was me as the television set, and I decided that I no longer needed to do anything, and that I just was a witness now to see what happens. And it was a vague notion, but clear. And then I began to realize that by not moving, you have no idea how much you use your toes to stand up. And it's a dance you can't even imagine. But I wasn't using my toes at this point. And then I realized, oh, this is going to be troublesome. And then I felt my body start to go back, and I realized, oh, fuck, here we go. And once I'm going. No defensive postures allowed, no putting out arms or anything like that. And my head slammed into the ground so hard, it made like a really good cracking noise. But then I was just laying on the ground, and I thought, well, I wonder what happens to a naked body found in the middle of the road in Marin County. Seemed like a reasonable question. And so I'm just laying there. My eyes are open. Occasionally I would get like some phlegm or something in my throat, and I'd have to just spit it out or something. And then I remembered the noises that I'm supposed to hear. And I thought, oh, where's the motorcycle? It's supposed to be a motorcycle coming. And I waited around, and then sure enough, I hear coming down the mountain this motorcycle, and it's kind of putting down the mountain. And then eventually it's getting closer and closer and closer, and eventually it stops near me. And I hear a guy talking to his date, and I can surmise various things from this conversation. It's their first date. He wasn't planning on this happening, and that he didn't feel right about leaving a naked body in the middle of the road. He needed to get somebody up here to help or something. And so I think he was just waiting, guarding my body. I was expecting someone to come up and like look in my eyes. My eyes are open. And I look in my eyes and say, hey, man, are you okay? Or something like that. No such thing happening at all. And And then a carload of people stopped. I'm guessing Jehovah's Witnesses, because they were all kind of middle-aged men, very nicely dressed with sport coats and ties and stuff like that. I don't know what else they'd be doing up there. And they decided that it would probably be better for me to be off the road. So, because I'm in the middle of the road. And so they each lift up, take a limb. One on a leg, one on an arm. And I guess normally that would scare the shit out of me, because I don't really trust people to be whatever they're intending to do. But I felt perfectly comfortable. And they lifted me up and took me over to the side of the road and put me down. And I thought, cool, now whose coat do I get? Because I'm still cold. And every once in a while I would shiver or something, or have to cough up some phlegm or something. And so I'm obviously awake. I'm not knocked out. And then the police show up. And then I'm listening to this conversation. This is getting good. The police is talking about the wild man who lives up in the water district above Marin. I'm assuming he's talking about me or whatever, although I don't live up there or anything. But apparently it's the first time he's seen Sasquatch or whatever. And he calls an ambulance. So it's all making sense. It's all kind of a progression of things. Okay, that's good. I'm going with this. I like it. But I still keep thinking somebody's going to bend over and go, hey, man, are you all right? Not to be. And finally, these guys from the ambulance comes, and they take out the stretcher and do it, and they bring it over next to me, and they open it up, and it's just these white sheets and white blankets, and it's beautiful. And it's clean. I forgot about clean. And they put me into it, and then they covered me up, and then they strapped me in tight. And I was strapped in tight, and it felt so good. I was warm again. I was warm, and I was secure, and they slid me into the ambulance, and one of them sat in the back with me, and one of them was driving. And I thought, this is the greatest. And then the light show began. This wasn't an imaginary light show, it was a real light show. Things you don't normally notice, like the sunlight bouncing off of windshields or bumpers, back when cars had chrome bumpers and things, or lots of chrome. And the light show was on the inside of the ambulance, and I could just see every reflection, and it was beautiful. It was like, and I'm just marveling at this fabulous light show in this super clean, nice, warm, and secure environment. I'm digging it. And the guy who was sitting in back with me has kind of more of an effeminate vibe to him. The driver's kind of a harsh guy. He had a vibe, like macho, Mr. Macho. And the guy back there, I could feel him grokking me. If any of you know what grokking is, it's from Stranger in a Strange Land. It's a sci-fi story. And it's when somebody will try to feel inside of you and feel what you're feeling. It's the empathy kind of thing, very deep empathy, however. And I could feel this guy was grokking me. He was trying to understand what is going on here, what is he looking at, But once again, nobody asked or looked or anything. I have no idea what I would have said anyway. But anyway, and then Mr. Macho in the front seat says to the guy in back, he goes, you can do anything you want to him. And that was a moment. And that was a moment for him, too. He thought about it, and I could just say that was the end of the grok. And he said, yeah, I guess I could if there was anything I wanted to do to him. And that was the end of that conversation. And so we went back to the grok. And then we got to Marin General Hospital, where they lifted me out. Then they stand up, whatever they are, the things, and rolled me into the hospital, rolled me into the elevator. I'm just laying there. When is somebody going to ask me how I'm doing? And finally, the guy who'd been grokking me in the back, he's behind me. My head's at this end of the, whatever you call the thing. Gurney, thank you, yes. And all of a sudden, I see this guy look over at me, right into my face, looks right into my eyes, deep. And and that is a weird thing. If you ever look at your friends or anybody upside down, everybody looks crazy. And so he looks over at me, and then I could just feel him lock into my eyes, and then he just throws himself back against the side of the elevator. He goes, whoop, 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 like that, and then he like collapses against the wall, and he goes, "Oh man, I've always wanted to do that," and and his friend was amazed, to say the least. And I thought, well, that was good. That was good. We're finally beginning to communicate. And they took me into the hospital where they didn't really know what to do with me. And so they put me into a examination room where it was cold and dark. And they took away my sheets and my blanket and everything. And so I'm laying on the examination table, and I'm very naked and very cold and chilly. And every once in a while, I'll shiver and fuck, where's a blanket? And eventually, a doctor, every once in a while, a nurse would come in, and she'd just look down at me, and I'd shiver, whatever. And then she finally put her hand on my chest, and that was warm, and I would stop shivering. Then she'd take her hand away and shiver again. And then she did that a few times. And then she went out in the hall, and I heard her talking to her friend saying, "Oh, I think he's just like making some voluntary movements to, get my attention or something." Whatever hallucinations she was having. And so I'm back there by myself again, waiting for some warmth. And eventually a doctor comes in and sits down next to me. And he doesn't say anything, but I can feel him. He's grokking me too. And I can feel him just kind of weaving around inside me, trying to figure out, what is this? What is this that he's looking at? And he finally goes, "Ego loss?" And that's the name of that game. It's Tim Leary talks about it a lot in his expressions about psychedelic experiences and stuff. And so it was like, well, there's the name of the game. It's a place where your individual ego sort of ceases to exist. You're just part of the universe, basically. But the game was named. It was over as a game, and I just turned to him and I said, "Yep." And he said, and he thought about it for a while, and then he said, "Could a friend bring you some clothes?" And I said, "Yep." Then he thought about that for a while. Then he realized that I meant anybody who brought me clothes was my friend. And he kind of went, oh. And he got up and left. And he came back a little while later and brought me a set of clothes, which I then put on, none of which I would ever have considered wearing before. But it was a new person now. And I put on my new clothes, and he said, "You okay?" And I said, "Yep." And he said, "You know who you are?" And I said, "Yep." Glad you didn't ask. And and I walked out of the hospital. And that was my day in Marin. And I keep thinking there's another half to this, but I don't remember what it is. Imagine that. If I think of it, I'll tell you. Otherwise, I think that's the story. But I'm trying to remember. Yeah, that'll do it. So if you ever see anybody laying in the road, ask them how they're doing. They may surprise you. If anybody has any questions, feel free.
Can you talk about this?
That is my latest piece of art. Years ago, I used to do photo montage. It's kind of looked down on in the art world in many ways. Unless you're using your own images, your own photographs. This began with one of my own photographs. I got on a photo kick at some point, and I was taking these large photographs. This is one large photograph is where it starts out in a nightclub in Philadelphia called Pulsations. I will say the coolest nightclub in the world at that time. That was in the late 80s, probably forever, I'd guess. Somebody in Philadelphia had, this is where, the Revolutionary War took place, and in the town of, what the hell was it? There's one of the Revolutionary Wars took place that was now like a tourist go-to, but there were no hotels there at all. So there was a few bed and breakfasts, and this guy got the idea to build a hotel there. And he built a 400-room hotel, Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. That's where it was. He built a 400-room hotel, 100 of which he reserved to make his own statements. You know, they were like, you know, Louis the 14th room or caveman room or whatever he wanted to do. He was having fun with it. He also had his own construction crew. They were not union, so they were not looked upon highly. They were not, but this hotel made a fortune. This guy made so much money from this adventure that he had to lose some money somewhere. So he decided to build another place. And this was in south of Philly, about 30 miles south, out near the closest town. It's probably like Media, Pennsylvania, 10 miles away, 15 miles away. It's out near the Franklin Mint where they can have something like that, spewing out, you know, poisonous fumes and stuff. And they came. I had a show in New York at another nightclub that area that I'd redone the nightclub. The area was pretty cool in New York. They were the most popular nightclub for about 3 years because every 8 weeks they would gut the nightclub, and then make a whole new nightclub. And it was a whole new. It was always on a theme like suburbia or money or whatever, and they really did a good job. They'd spend like 70, 80 grand just to redo the nightclub. And so everybody who had once come to the nightclub comes back and, you know, brings their friends, et cetera, et cetera. I'm in New York now. This is what I'm talking about. It's moving around. Anyway, that was a cool show. What I didn't realize about those people, they'd come to California and invite, and their sister was doing business with me. We're making agreements about me going back to New York and doing their nightclub. And I knew her because she had come to my first drag ball as one of my friends in the band. I had two bands at this party. One of them was the Whores of Dresden, and one of them was Mama, as opposed to Dada. They were into Dada art at the time. And his girlfriend, and I recognized her, and she was speaking on behalf of her brothers who owned this nightclub in New York. And so we made deals, blah, 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 a bunch of money and stuff. And I went back there. So while I'm at that nightclub, these other people from Philadelphia had heard about it, and they came to New York, and they asked me, they said, we've got a nightclub in Philadelphia that's really cool. You'll really like it. Will you come and do our nightclub next? And this had been such a misadventure and a lot of work, and the rewards were not great. The people, as it turned out, were rip-off artists who owned the nightclub, and it had turned out that they had the whole idea of their club they had stolen from a bunch of my friends and myself. They were from Sonoma, and in Mill Valley we had a museum called the Unknown Museum, and we used to have theme parties at the museum. We'd have suburbia night where we'd have barbecues going and roasting Barbie dolls and things on them, etc. Things like that. Or casino night where we'd have gambling and you could win art or whatever. Things like this. And these guys had been coming to our parties and they thought, this is a cool idea. And their parents owned a place in Sonoma County where doctors or lawyers or people would come spend the weekend. And they thought, we should do something like this. And so they had like some kind of festival. I don't know how they announced them or whatever, but they were catered. They had bands and stuff, and people would come, and then they would burn the caterers, the bands, all these people. That was the thing, and you can't really do that too many times before people start wanting to kill you. And what's that? Yeah, before you get elected president, exactly. And so they had left and gone to New York. I think they borrowed a bunch of money to do this, and they were definitely living the high life in New York. And they were liars and scumbags, and like they didn't honor any of our agreements, and it became kind of a horrifying experience, you know, because they'd make agreements with me because I could see they were making mucho dinero there. The first weekend, they had like $48,000 in cash to take to the bank and stuff. So I saw it, and I thought, they haven't even paid me the money they promised me just for coming here and stuff. And then I'd try to make agreements with them. Give me a night, because I heard on the radio, DJs would announce, come to area, blah, 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 Tuesday night or whatever, or Wednesday night or whatever. Anyway, people would come, and they would pay them to do this, because then they'd sell booze and stuff like that. And so I went and I asked for a night, and they said, well, you think you'd get 300 people in here? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I thought, I got that many relatives in New York. And my Cadillac was there as well. And so I thought, that will be easy. And they said, okay, we'll give you invitations. The invitations let 2 people in. It costs like $18 a person to get in the nightclub, $2 to park your coat. Drinks are $6 if you don't call them well drinks, stuff like that. So there's a lot of money changing hands here. They said, okay, I'll give you like a Tuesday night, the worst night of the week. And they gave me 1,500 invitations to hand out, and they're free passes in. And these guys are, they know what they're doing here. They're making a lot of money, but they're spending a lot of money. Living in New York is not cheap. And I think what had happened was they'd run out of ideas. After 3 years, they'd run out of ideas, and they thought, well, let's go back to where we started from and see if we can get some new ideas. And that's what it really had turned out had happened. And they'd come back to, the Unknown Museum, or, I don't know how, I guess their sister knew me. And she'd been up at Toad Hall where I lived and seen the place and told them, okay, she could make that connect. And so it turned into this grotesque horror show of these people lying to me. And I'd find myself standing in their office screaming at these people, I don't know how to do business with people who just lie, because I don't know how to go. Where do you go from someone who says, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do this, and then they don't? And so it was very frustrating for me. So when these new people came and asked me if I'd do a show at their nightclub in Philadelphia, I said, I don't think so. We're kind of burned out in this whole thing. And then they tried to throw me out they owed me piles of money, and they just threw me out, basically. They weren't going to pay anything. But fortunately, a lot of those relatives in New York are lawyers and judges and things like that. So it was a bad town to fuck with me. And so I went to my cousin, and I told him what was going on, and he sympathized. And he said, well, what do you need? I said, I need to get paid the money they owe me. And then he said, okay, well, see if you can get their money guy over, bring him over at 2 o'clock or something. And I said, I'll try. And so I went and talked to him, and I said, my lawyer cousin who's in the Empire State Building would like to see you. And because otherwise I'm going to sue your ass, and we'll see what happens from that. And so he came over and started the conversation. My cousin's very reasonable. He's like 80 years old, but he's very reasonable, and he's just saying, Larry, what do you need? What do you really need? And I go, well, they owe me this, they owe me. He goes, forget what they owe you. What do you need? And I said, I need to get home. I need to buy a bus or a truck or rent something. And I've got a whole bunch of my friends are there. And we need to drive cross country. We need hotels. We need food. We need all this other things. And then he said, give me a number. And I gave him a number. And he said to their money guy, he said, that sounds pretty reasonable considering what you've promised him and what you owe him. Because on my night, that they gave me, my Tuesday night, I went out with these 1,500 invitations in the Cadillac. And New York is littered with papers from people trying to get you to come to their pizza parlor or whatever. And nobody even will take them. So the streets are just covered with these papers. But anything coming out of the Cadillac, people wanted. And there are people on crutches running after us and stuff. And they wanted whatever we're handing out. And so I'm handing out these things to them, these invitations, and I realize, shit, each one of these, they're going to give me $2 for every person who shows up to begin with, and then once they make their nut, which is about $1,600 a night, I get 25% of the bar. So it looks like there's a bunch of money to be made here. And then I realized, shit, I'm just giving these things away to everybody. And so I had to get more, and I realized I'm going to run out today. And I still have like a week till the event. And so I start asking people and saying, like some very middle-class, normal-looking person will come up and say, like, oh, can I have, whatever it is on hand? Yeah. And I said, these are invitations to a nightclub, and they're like worth $36. Do you go to nightclubs? And I remember this one lady going, yes, yes. And I said, really? Do you go to nightclubs on a Tuesday night? And she said, yeah, yeah. And I said, really? Would you, if I give you this, will you come to this nightclub next Tuesday night? And she goes, yes, yes. And I said, swear to God? And she, and that was that. And she couldn't get beyond that one. I thought that's very funny. And so I had to interview people before I'd give them out. And so within hours, I'm out of these invitations. And I go back and they said, if you run out of these, we'll print you up some more. So I went back in and said, I'm out, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, did you go out to, the suburbs and hand them out at the disco, not what you call them, where people buy clothes, what they call this town. Not a mall, just a boutique. Out to the boutiques out, around New York. I said, no, I didn't go out there. I couldn't even get out of the city before all these things were gone. And they're like, oh, I get it, blah, 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 And I said, well, get me some more invitations. I'll take them out as far as I can get. And they never, ever gave me any more invitations. And then I'd go back to where I was staying with my friend Louis Soyas, who's a National Geographic photographer, and I'd constantly bitch about these people. And he'd go, oh, Larry, don't you think you should, cut down on the drugs a little? And I'd go, fuck you, man, this has nothing to do with drugs. It has to do with people making promises and not keeping them. And he's going, yeah, I know, And I go, okay, fuck you, come with me. You're coming with me, and we're going to go in, and we're going to make a deal tomorrow. And I said, we're going to make a deal for whatever. We'll make something up here, and we'll make a deal that's supposed to come true in 2 days. And I want you to see how this works. I don't want to do all this bullshit, Patronizing, I think is the word. And and so we went in, made a deal, and then 2 days later went back in where they're supposed to come across, and they said, well, we didn't say we would do that, etc. And I'm like, fuck you, okay, get it, okay, you see what I'm doing? Good. And he got off my case. That was good, so I was staying with him, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, so these people from Philadelphia came and said, do our nightclub. And I said, I don't think so. And they said, it's right on your way home. We'll give you $100. We'll give you guys rooms to stay in. We'll feed you. We just want you to see our club and see if you want to do it. It's like, half an hour off the freeway going cross country. I went, okay, I'll check it out. And so everybody's kind of up for an adventure anyway, whatever. And so we're driving across, and we get off the freeway, and we're going through what's like driving around here. It'd be like driving down 128 or something. It's like, where could there possibly be a nightclub out in the middle of this? Kind of like Toad Hall used to be, but if it just seemed so unlikely. And we're driving and driving. It's almost midnight, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, check it out. It looked like Chartres Cathedral. It was a huge building that had flying buttresses and towers and things coming out of the roof, and it was lit to the max. And it had an entranceway that was just 30 feet of mirrors. All these mirrors like a pyramid shape with lights, 10,000 patterns of lights running down. And it was pretty impressive. And we got out and thought, what the fuck is this doing out in the middle of nowhere? And we went in, and they had been waiting for us to put on a show for us. And it was all disco music. This place had been built to do shows, real shows, theater, all kinds of stuff. It was a dinner club. They had dressing rooms. They had full-on stage, everything you could possibly imagine. There were 11 bars servicing the people sitting here. They had this place had been designed brilliantly so that there was never another person or post in front of you between you and the stage. You always had absolute direct vision It was spectacular. In the entranceway, the wallpaper was like 4 colors of suede with chrome and glass everywhere. And I'm looking at this place and thinking, what the fuck could they possibly want me to do to make this place cooler? And but they were convinced. They'd been there for probably 3 or 4 years. They had never made a penny. They'd always been in the red. They didn't know they were supposed to be. That's another thing. The guy who had built this nightclub, it was built to lose money. It was for his taxes and for something fun to do. And he had taken his creative people all over the world. They went to every nightclub they heard, no matter where it was in the world, that they heard was cool. And then they went back to Philadelphia and designed a new one. Cooler than all of them, guaranteed. And then in the county that he wanted to build it in, they didn't want him. He didn't use union labor, very no-no, et cetera, et cetera. And so they tried to put things in his way and said, well, a liquor license is $500,000. And he goes like, plunk. And they go, oh, shit, that didn't work. Okay, you can't just serve liquor. You have to have food. Otherwise, people just get drunk and will go out and start crashing into each other. And he goes, fine. Adds on a kitchen for 50 cooks, literally. And this is a beautiful kitchen. And they also start serving food there. On Thursday nights, for $9 you get in, you get like a Christmas, Thanksgiving dinner like you couldn't even imagine. Plus your well drinks, everything, $9 whole night. But yeah, it's pretty spectacular, and they're still losing money, of course. Oh, when he built the kitchen, they went, that didn't work, shit. Well, you can't just have that. That's got to be part of a hotel. So he built 10 rooms on to the hotel, or to this building. He put 10 motel rooms or hotel rooms on. They're part of this. This building also, at this point in time, is the home base of the Chippendales. Yeah, the male dancers. And they're a wild crew. Everybody thinks they're all these, gay guys, whatever. They're all buffed and beautiful. And what's that?
I said half of them were.
I didn't find that. But they did have was access to, that wasn't a personal thing. If I wanted to, I would, but whatever. And so they were a wild bunch, and they were always like they'd have bachelorette parties. Men were not allowed at the Chippendale shows, so it was all women. They'd come, they'd have these 6 to 8 o'clock, bachelorette parties, and these guys were raunchy. I mean, they would. It was always acts. It wasn't just dance routines and stuff like that. It was always a bunch of construction workers on the corner, and some babe would walk by, and they'd woo woo, and stuff like that. And then they'd come swinging out into the audience and grab chicks and put their faces and rub their faces. And then if you wanted them to do something to your friend next door, you just hold up some money behind their head, and then they'd come out and maul that person. And then they would invite all these women to stay. They'd go, the club opens up in half an hour. You're all welcome here to just stay for free. And that was enticing. And then their boyfriends would come to pick them up and be pissed off because they had a feeling this was unsavory or something. I don't know what. But they could see these girls were all kind of turned on at this point. And then these guys, and the Chippendales guys are just making the rounds, trying to hustle girls, because they don't even have to take them home. They can just take them up to the hotel rooms. They've got 5 of them. There's 5 more that they give to me. And so they know their way around. And then these guys are, taking out their aggressions on these guys, and they're going like, you faggots. Like that. And that's what they lived for. They lived for somebody calling them a faggot. And they go, yeah, let's step outside. And then outside they'd all go. And there were wars that would just happen out in the parking lot. And the ones that weren't in the wars just sit up in the hotel rooms. I'd sit up there with them. I didn't really want to participate. And just watch these guys. And they were brutal. And, and these, crunching people's heads in doors and cars and stuff like that. It's fun to watch. Brutal, though. And so I decided, yeah, this looks like fun. I'll stick around here. And so we made a deal, and I stuck around. That's where that picture, the picture that's underneath there, comes from. Was roundabouts. Anybody else? My neck? Oh, this is what Christians will be wearing the next 2,000 years. You see, when Jesus returns, they won't, of course, nail him up, but they will give him an injection to get rid of him. So Christians will be wearing these hypodermic syringes with Jesus on them for the next 2,000 years. It's a fashion statement.
What's your first recollection of your first work of art that made you think there might be an artist? Like your earliest piece?
Piece of art?
Yeah, your earliest piece that made you think that maybe I have some potential as an artist.
God.
Where and when and what?
Well, my early years were in Chicago, out on the south side, way south. Those were neighborhoods in change. And our parents were trying to get us out to the suburbs. But I was there for my first 4 years. Talk about body memories. I was one of these kids that, like, if we're going to be going somewhere, I will be like a jumping bean and jump out into the street. And remember, my mom had these long red fingernails. I just feel them, like, bite into the back of my arm, like, wah! And she'd then tell me the rules, never, ever cross the street, blah, blah, blah. You look, but when you do, you'll be looking both ways, make sure nothing's coming, blah, blah. Say what? Oh, I absolutely got the hint. I can almost feel them right now. And so I knew the rules, and I thought I was smart. Also, I had a crush on a girl in the apartment building we lived in, and I imagine I must have stolen the money because I have no idea where I would have gotten the money, but I would make runs to the candy store to go get candy for the girls. There were 2 girls in the building, actually. And this is crossing streets in Chicago, kind of danger. But I know the rules. So, and I'm feeling like a big man now. I'm almost 4 and a half, or whatever. And so I'm doing this stuff. And one day I'm walking down the street, and I realize, across the street, there's that house. I know the guy who lives in that house, and I can go visit him because I know how to cross the street. And so I went between 2 parked cars. I looked both ways, nothing coming. Headed out across the street. What I didn't know about, nobody taught me about, was T-bone streets. And there was a T-bone street right at the end of this block. And as I was crossing the street, a motorcycle came around the corner, fairly good clip, and hit me pretty hard. It hit me, the handlebar hit me in the back of the head, and I don't know if it crushed the skull. They definitely knew I got hit in the back of the head. It knocked me down and knocked all my teeth out. Yeah. That's why I'm saying, yeah, you haven't even begun to get it yet. And so the one thing I remembered was those fingernails, and I thought, there's no way I am going to be found in the middle of the street. And I remember the guy on the motorcycle, he was on the ground at that point, and I remember him looking at me in this horrifying, this horrified face, and him imagining, the rest of his life in prison. And he just got up and got on his motorcycle and took off. And I couldn't blame him a bit. And I wasn't going to be found in the street, and I crawled to the sidewalk and then collapsed. What? Yeah, exactly. No, but 2 girls came along who knew where I lived or something, and they got me home, who got me to the hospital. In the hospital, they couldn't understand what had happened. It looked like somebody put my head in a vise and closed it because the back's crushed, the front's crushed. And I'm not telling what happened. And I was found on the sidewalk. So nobody could make any sense of this at all. And I'm not sure if that qualifies as a work of art or not. Well, I know. I'm trying to think. But I think I jumped. Well, I jumped from there to creative people often have head injuries, or so they tell me.
Right, beyond the head injury,
Well, I don't know.
when did you finally think that you could actually make some art?
I thought that was artistic. Getting from the street to the sidewalk.
Epileptic, that was
Yeah, well, I didn't know that for a long time, that I was epileptic from that adventure. That was a good.
practice question. When did you first actually think you could make art?
I always did things.
You did great paintings in college. I have some.
Oh yeah, well, it began a little before that.
Where did it start?
I was always drawing and coloring books. We had coloring books and stuff, as long as I can remember. I don't remember a time when I wasn't doing stuff like that. And I also had a weird sense of completeness, of things having to be complete. I remember my brother breaking a leg off of one of my horses on my wagon or something like that, and then not wanting it to touch it anymore. It was ruined or some weird shit like that. And and I had a pretty strong sense of like what I thought I should be doing. I remember riding out on my tricycle on the street, and my brother was out there with me, and he had his whole collection of baseball cards in a shopping bag, and he said, "There, put this on, here, take this for me." And I thought, fuck, no, I don't want that. It like throws off the symmetry. This is artistic too. The symmetry of my handlebars. Now I've got this shopping bag hanging from it. Fuck that. And I just took it and threw it on the ground.
How about your first paintings?
Paintings. Oh God, you're getting into horror story territory now.
Paid, not painting. Paid.
Paid. Like the first time you got paid for a piece of work.
Oh, okay. Well, that was that was a painting. What's that? When did I become a professional? You mean?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah. I did a painting probably in high school, I'm guessing, and I sold it for exactly how much it would cost me to get a tumbler and the materials for tumbling rocks.
Yes.
Because that's what I wanted to do. And so that was my first sale. Well, and there was another one almost in there where my dad really didn't care about art much. My mom was very much an artistic person or whatever. She was actually kind of a genius in her own insane way. And when I think about something that she did, it amazes me. And I see that I never really regarded it until much later in life, realized what an influence it had on me. She loved being a hostess of parties and things like that. And she was having a big party. Those days, you never saw labels on anything. No labels anywhere. No Nikes, no nothing. You weren't What's that? What's that? Is that what is that what the devil wears? Prada? Yeah, you would never know. You would never know that in those days, because those were all hidden. And my mom was having a party once, and she got all of her friends. Everybody's aware of the labels, however. I don't mean to say they don't exist. They're aware of them. So when they go to parties and they drop off their furs on the bed in the kid's bedroom or wherever, they drape them so that they open up and you see the label, where they came from, whose furs these were, and stuff like that. And my mom got her friends to all let her cut the labels out of all their really expensive clothes, and then she carefully sewed them perfectly over a jumpsuit that was totally covered in all these labels. And what she was actually saying, I'm not sure. I think I know, but it's a tricky one. And it was cool. It was really beautiful. I wish I knew where it was today. I'd say I did it. What's that? I moved to Toad Hall. Oh, well, Toad Hall was an operating place in the 70s. It was run by Donna Brown, was thought to be the owner. Didn't quite, it was almost true. And her and Kathy O'Grady and Lee Larson ran it, and they did a great job. It had been built as a dinner dancing nightclub. People came from all over the coast and went there. It was run by a guy named Ted Watkins, he was a creative bookkeeper. He did some very creative bookkeeping for people until he got too creative, and then he had to leave town quickly. And then that land went up for auction. And a land developer from the East Coast bought the place and gave it to his daughters, Donna and Patsy Brown. gave it to them, and they came out here and they started a nightclub. The nightclub was a great place. It had, wine and beer, stuff like that. The girls really kept it nice because the way it was set up was along sides there were booths and there were some tables. Along the back was a big long bar, and then there was a dance floor in the middle of the place that was it was elevated about 1.5 or 2 feet, and it had, I don't know what you call this stuff, linoleum on it or something. And then for the musicians, there was a very small, like a basket thing at the top of the dance floor. Because in those days, it's just like a 3-piece band. But then in the days of the hippies and musicians come in, well, they got these stacks of speakers and stuff. They need the whole dance floor for their, their drum sets and their speakers and stuff like that. So we would all dance out on the floor, which was carpeted. And fortunately, the girls were really good at housekeeping and stuff, and they would vacuum every night. And somewhere along, and it went on, it was a community place. It was very, there was a big field where there were baseball games and volleyball games. People would get married out there. There was a pond. You'd go swimming naked. It was a fun place. And eventually what happened was, I believe Donna's bookkeepers or whoever was running the trust fund or whatever it was said, oh, you've got a public place, you need to have insurance. And as it was like $1 to get in. Half the people snuck in. The kids were very creative about it. Most of us would come at night, so you're not even aware this building has 2 floors. It's about 5,000 square feet footprint, but when you come in the driveway, it goes around and you just see the top. And you go in, and that's all you know about. But the kids who are there in the daytimes know that there's also a 5,000 square foot basement in this building where there's hotel rooms and things like that, all kinds of weird shit. And when they want to come into the club, because they're not allowed in because they're not 21, they would go shut off the electricity in the basement. And then the doorman would have to go down to the basement to turn the electricity back on, and they'd all stream into the club and hide out. And there's a lot of places to hide in the club. And that went on for a while until the insurance became an issue. And there was no way the place could make any money while paying insurance for, liability. Well, that's after I moved in. And so, and I was friends with Donna. We used to go camping together. She'd go out with one of my best friends and stuff, and we were friendly. And it had been closed for about a year. And I was out at Valpaux Ranch. I'd already built as much as I could out there. I had a school bus to avoid building codes. And then I built a second floor. That took it up to about 17 feet. And then I built a studio off of that from 17 feet, about 40 feet out behind it. And I was pretty much used up. I had some chicken coops, too, for workspace, but I was pretty much out of space. And so I asked Donna one day, I said, what's going on with the toad? And she said, you want to buy it? And I said, oh, yes. And not that I had any money, but that was secondary. And I said, how much? And she said, how does $115,000 sound? And I said, sounds great, split it. Because I knew it was on 62 acres, and I knew I wasn't getting the whole thing for $115,000. So, she knew all I was interested in was the driveway over. And it was a large piece of property on a funny pie wedge kind of shape. And I said, split it. And I said, I'm going to have to start working on this place right away, because by that time it had been closed about a year, and it just leaked like a sieve. And there's carpeting. As I was saying, we danced on carpet, because the dance floor was filled with musicians. And then when she had to close it down, some people from Fort Bragg, there were these guys who had a store in Fort Bragg. They were East Coast people. Their store was called Cheap Thrills. And they were kind of Cheap Thrills people. They were sleazy. They would the money that came in at the door or the bar went straight to their cocaine dealers, and they never heard of carpet cleaners or whatever, any of that stuff. They never did anything. The dump was out the back door, blah blah blah, and it started to turn into a real pit. And And they didn't pay the rent, they didn't pay the bills, they didn't pay for anything. And finally, it got so you couldn't even dance there. You'd go there, the band would start to play, and as you'd start to dance, you could watch the dust begin to rise from the floor. And it was kind of like being in a cattle drive, I would imagine. Never been in one, but I would imagine a lot like that. And then it would get up to your mouth, and you had to leave. It was time to go. And that was about it. And so finally they kicked them out, locked the door, and it was closed about a year. And so I said, okay, I'm going to have to start working on it. She said, it's your place. Do whatever you want. And so I started working on it. And it's the point at which it was, the roof. I had another roof, and I thought, oh, a roof, that could be a floor too. Second floor. There's third floor at this point. And then went to the fourth and going on the fifth when we did have a problem. There were several problems that happened. To begin with, I didn't know 2 people owned it. I only thought 1 person owned it. And we had a deal. And then she got married and brought her husband out. He wasn't big on California hippies, bums, whatever. Yeah, he was a really fun guy. Don was a swell guy. Yeah, I remember at one point he came when she brought him back, because we had a deal, and she brought him back in, and he came into the place, and I'd been working on this place. I've been, I found out a way to make some money pretty fast, and so I was dumping it all in, and he came in, and he's like, we're back by where the bar used to be, and now there's a kitchen being built, and he goes, what's that? And I said, it's a sliding glass door. He goes, I can see that, but what's it for? And I said, well, I'm building a $3,000 redwood deck right outside that, and that's how we'll get to it. And he said, did you ask permission? And I said, yeah. Donna told me I could do whatever I wanted. And he said, well, don't think that anymore. You have to ask permission. And I said, I don't really see the problem here. If the deal goes through, good. If it doesn't, you end up with a $3,000 redwood deck and a sliding glass door to get to it. Where's the problem here? And he goes, just don't do anything else without asking permission. So we didn't until that night. We had one wall that we had to move, and we figured we could get it done. We could move the wall, sheetrock it, and paint it by dawn. So we did, and it was necessary. And then he came in about a week later, and he knew something was different, but he didn't know the building like we did. And he knew something was different, but he couldn't figure it out. So, yahoo! And then the next. And so at some point in there, I'm realizing, okay, people are pissed off at me. They think I've ruined Toad Hall for them. They don't realize that there was no Toad Hall anymore, and that I'm taking up that place. And they're pissed off at me because they think, that it's my personal space.
Hey, Larry, I remember you resurrecting Toad Hall.
Resurrecting Toad Hall?
Making it an amazing place.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Amazing things happened there.
Yeah, it got cooler and cooler. It was wonderful. I just kept spreading. No, thanks. I appreciate that. I was spreading out in all directions, heading for floor 5.
Just talk about the very first drag queen debutante's ball.
Drag Queens Debutante's Ball. Okay, I was thinking. Okay, I was thinking that I should throw a party for everybody. Yeah. I can afford a party. I can afford to throw a party. I hadn't moved in all my stuff yet, so we could still push things back to the walls. And I thought, a drag queen's debutante's ball in 10 days from the time I thought of it. And I thought, okay, a drag queen's debutante's ball. That should be fun. This is a really macho community. I'd like to see how they deal with this. So,
What year was that? It was 81 or something.
81 at the latest, yeah. It was 81. What's that? Yeah, but that was the second one. That's the one you were shooting at. Yeah, that was the second one. See, on the poster that I did for it, I wrote the first and only Drag Queens Debutante's Ball. I didn't want people to think this was going to be some yearly event because it was expensive. I bought 100 bottles of champagne, 10 cases of beer, about 5 gallons of hard stuff, and then the drugs, etc. And when you came in the door, you were given a ball of opium to put in your mouth, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, Maynard you were at the door, I think, handing out.
I was handing out the opium.
That's it. Okay, that all coming back to me now. I was thinking it was Bob Avery for a second, but it didn't really make sense. But there you go. There we have. Now it all makes sense. It was really a spectacular part. I had 2 bands, the Horrors of Dresden and Mama, and we didn't know. Well, that was Mama Dada. That was their thing. And then I got John Chamberlain to make the invitations for it, and he had a character that he often did, Outdoor Bob, and he always wore the plaid shirts and stuff. Yeah, and he had long hair and blah, blah, blah. And so he did Outdoor Barb. And he had Outdoor Bob sitting in front of, one of those tables with the mirrors and the lights, and he's going, oh, what am I going to wear tonight, doing his makeup and stuff. And we didn't want, it was just me and John at that point figuring out, okay, what should we do for this party, okay. And I thought, we don't want to have voyeurs, participation, full participation. Men in drag, period. Women, they gave a little more choice to. Radical, whores, prom queens, whatever you want. Or drag, anything you want. Just don't come in your regular clothes.
Full drag or full formal.
That's what I thought too.
Thank you, Jack.
Well,
I thought it was.
well, that's probably what I intended, but that's not how it worked out.
I don't remember anything
What's
about,
that?
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Carl, the mechanic? Yeah, of course.
Okay, I thought he didn't. I thought he
Oh, no, he was there. In fact, I started handing out, I didn't want a poster, even though I had posters made, I didn't want a poster. I didn't want the police to find out this party was going to happen. And then I began handing out the invitations by hand to people I knew in town. That was interesting. There were some not too many freakouts. I remember, let's see, first freak out was probably, who did the paintings in the Seagull? After it burnt? Yeah, Jim Maxwell, giving him to him. And I think he was gay, maybe admitting it or not, I don't remember. But I gave it to him, and he got paranoid and thought he was going to come in a dress and we were all going to stand and laugh at him. But that really wasn't the case. And so he got paranoid on me. I also remember, what was his name? He played lead guitar for, what was that band? What was that guy's name? For Canned Heat.
Oh, Canned Heat. Johnny Barbita's buddy.
Yeah, his buddy, but that wasn't his. I remember he was in the Seagull at that time. The Seagull was upstairs by then. And I went into the bar and went to the end of the bar, and I'm handing these out to my friends, and I give him one, and he looks at this thing, and he's like Mr. Macho or whatever, and he looks at this thing, and he goes, oh, my God. He goes, I'm going to get some of my friends from Fort Bragg and come down and kick the shit out of all you faggots. And I said, cool, do it. It sounds great, by all means. And he's like, I'm fuming here. And as I was leaving the bar, I stopped at the door, and I yelled, God, what the fuck was his name? Anyway, I yelled to him, whatever his name was. And I yelled to him, and I said, you forgot your bra and panties in my car, but I can bring them in if you want. And then left. And then the third negative was Steve Schlafer. And that was great, because Schlafer's was like, his dad had started the gas station, and they were like, really solid Mendonesians before there were Mendonesians. And I went in there, and it was really funny. And his wife, Judy, loved the idea. She was all for it. Yahoo, this will be great. Let's go. And he goes, no way. He was head of the fire department, volunteer fire department. He goes, I can see it now. There'll be a fire in the middle of the party, and we'll all, have to run out there, and I'll be wearing a dress. I'm the chief. He's the fire chief. He goes, and I'll be at the fire in a dress fighting this fire. And I said, so will all your friends. So will the rest of the people fighting the fire. And he couldn't go for it. Too bad. She was all for it.
Alan Wilson?
How long was what?
Alan Wilson?
Oh, no.
Harvey Mandel.
Nope.
No, he was a really good-looking guy.
Yep.
Mercury and all the girls loved him.
I remember a bunch of us went out to the sea.
I always delivered Michael Underhill back then. It was fun.
I think he played lead guitar for him, as I recall.
Henry Vestine.
Nope. What was that guy's name? You know, because Mendocino's always been sort of a haven for rock and roll musicians. They put out to pasture here in Compshe. They give them some seeds to plant and put them out in the fields. And so we've had our share of rock and rollers out here. Yeah.
Bob Height.
Nope. God, what was the guy's?
Fancy name.
Taylor Day.
No. Well, she's one of the musicians that comes here or came here, but she wasn't playing for Canned Heat.
He was extra famous.
Yeah, this guy, he was like extra famous, except you can't find him on the internet. So how famous was he really? Did he just convince us that he was famous?
He had the Mercury station, car, an old 50s Mercury.
Gonna buy me a Mercury and cruise it on down the road. Dun, 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 dun.
Moved back east with Michael Underhill.
Yeah, probably. Did Michael Underhill move back to Hill?
We went back to share the millions back at home, back east somewhere. Michael Underhill died.
I got his Mercedes with a 396 Chevy engine, a Corvette rear end, and a Corvette transmission, and a huge Mercedes. What was it? They called it a limo. We wouldn't have called it a limo, but they did.
That was Bob the Bear, right?
No.
Lionel? No.
God damn. We should call the Lambs. Call Judge Lamb and find out. He would know.
Call Carol.
I hated that guy. No, not Judge Lamb. This guy, this rock and roller. Because one night the Lambs used to have parties all the time at the Judge's house. It was the safest place to have a party. What was going to happen there? Nothing. And I remember, I was making moves on these two cute girls that I'd seen around, and he comes in, the rock and roll star, and he spots the cute girls, and they're gone, and I'm like, oh well, win some, lose some, whatever. And then half an hour later, he's at the door saying, good night, everybody, and he's leaving without the girls, and it's like, what? You stole them away from me and didn't even take them with you? And so I hated him ever since. Probably called him a lot of names. What the hell was that guy's name? No, it wasn't Cipollina. Wrong band. God, are you still in Canned Heat?
Yeah. There's a bunch of them.
Let me see the names. Maybe I'll recognize one. Harvey, no. We might have been duped. Solomon, Chris Morgan, Jock Ellis. Wow, there's a lot of people in that band. It really is.
Did it last a long time?
I don't remember it lasting a long time. I don't see his name. We were duped.
Maybe there's more than one.
The hell? I can't remember the guy's name.
Bob's Bear Height.
Do you remember his name? No, you're too young. No idea.
Hi, Dad.
Nice sweetheart.
That was really fun. I loved the,
Jesus was after you.
Jesus was
You're going to have to convert now.
connect with me.
Nope. Nope. I'll know his name as soon as I hear his name, I'll know it. What?
Chris Morgan, it's guitar, right?
Yeah, he played lead guitar, I'm pretty sure.
And what year?
I have no idea. Well, it probably before 80.
Mark Schuyler? Mike Halby? Mike Halby? Is the right name?
Oh, fuck.
Walter Trout?
Nope. I've lost so many names. I used to know all the actors' names and stuff, and I lost them all because I used to think every human interaction has a component in a movie. Because once I'd seen 1,000 movies, I realized everything that happens already happened in a movie. And so somebody'd come up and start bitching about something, I'd go, oh yeah, blah, 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 in whatever movie. And then I started losing all the names of actors. And now they're almost all gone. Yeah, all the ones it's really a weird thing. It's just their names or the names of the movies they were in or whatever. That's the first thing going, that I've noticed anyway.
Psychological archetypes at that point.
Well, yeah, they were to me. And that's why I would say them. But it's funny because there's the actors I really like a lot, and I can't even tell you their names right now. But because they just disappear out of my head. And then I had, last week, I remembered a whole bunch of them all at once. It was like, I knew them all their names, and then they all disappeared again.
What were you doing
When
when you remembered all of them?
I was talking about movies with my friend John. We were talking about them, and it just all of a sudden, I remembered, no. Way a little more radical. Think more like Bad Lieutenant Harvey Keitel, yeah. And, in True Romance, the one who, he says to, oh God, I can't believe I lose all their names. Okay, Easy Rider, Peter Fonda, and, but who else?
Jack Nicholson.
Dustin Hoffman.
What's his name?
His partner riding the other bike.
Who is that? Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper. Yeah. I always like Dennis Hopper. But Dennis Hopper's in True Romance, and he's fuck, I hate this. He's Christian Slater's dad. And he had been a, what's that?
Dennis Hopper is the most jacked on art actor there.
Oh, yeah. Well, he had some real heavy stuff in his life go down. They put him away in a loony bin and forgot about him for many years before somebody remembered, oh, shit, and went and got him out. Yeah, but in that one, oh, God, what's this actor's name? I love it. He's the one who came to me and said, I work for Blue Boyle. He goes, remember this face? When you're in heaven, you can tell the angels you saw the face of the devil right before you died. And he said, just to keep things straight here, my dad was the king of Sicilian of liars, and he taught me what the fuck do they call them? It's like the postures. There's another word for posture. But he said he taught me those things. He said if you know these things, they'll beat a lie detector all to hell. Men have they're like tells, like tells in cards or something. He goes, a man has 17, a woman has 21. What's that? Oh, anyway, and he says that to him, and he goes, so save us all a lot of grief, and don't lie to me. And he goes, now, have you seen your son lately? And his son had been there, Christian Slater had been there the day before. And he goes, and it was great. And he goes, no, I haven't seen my son for a while. And he's like shaking his head yes and saying no. It was great. It was a perfect synthesis of this whole talent that he's talking about. And he comes up and he stares him in the face. And he goes, bam, and breaks his nose. and he's there like bleed. He'd offered him some, a Pall Mall first, and he went, no thanks, And then afterwards he's like bleeding, and he gives him his handkerchief, and he's bleeding all over, and he goes, can I get that Pall Mall now? and he goes, and that's as good as it's gonna get. Yeah. That was such a great movie.
So Larry, I have an album of the second Drag King Ball. I kept two duplicates.
Cool. I got some of your photos, but not many.
I have all of them.
Cool.
All but one. Stan came back and got the second copy, but I made duplicate copies. So
Oh, how cool.
If you'd ever like to look at it, let me
I'd love to look at it. Are you still out there on Middle Ridge?
I'll give you my card.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that was great. That was a great event. I remember they all got pretty. It took 11 years to get me to do that party again.
That's a good sign.
What's that? Yeah, well, yeah, because I said I'm not doing this again. I mean, it was wild. The party was wild. I mean, we're sitting there. We called it for 10 o'clock, and so we're sitting there in the living room. Me and John. I don't know who else was there, and we're sitting there, and we see people coming down the hall because they had this long hall, and we're sitting there looking like, oh, whoa, look at this babe. Oh shit, it's the plumber. Because we're totally duped. I'd never, been in this situation at all. And so it was really a mind fuck, a radical, mind fuck, because I'd never seen it. I don't even know why I thought of it. It just sounded like something.
You just wrote about Toad Hall the other day in the Henderson Valley Advertiser.
Really? Is that still Bruce Anderson?
Yeah. Like a couple weeks ago,
What did he say?
there was like one segment they were talking about it stays as a nightclub.
Wow. I wonder what if, I wonder, because, once the nightclub was gone, I mean, I still called it Toad Hall. There's a lot of Toad Halls in the United States.
No, they were writing about your house.
Oh, they were about my house. Oh,
I sent it to Aura.
you sent it what?
I sent it to Aura.
Oh, really? She didn't even tell me about it.
I'm out of here, man.
Cool, man. Good to see you.
Yep. Good to see you.
Are you going? Where are you going? Back to Paluma?
Back up to Cleon.
Oh, Cleon.
So you can irrigate your hogs.
Yeah. But oh yeah, it's for the Lord.
Well, of course it is. That's what we all say, right?
Bless you, brother.
It's for the Lord.
Of course.
Slamming for Christ.
When I put a spike into my vein and I tell you things aren't quite the same, and I'm rushing on my run and I feel like Jesus' son. Oh, but I guess I just don't know.
I think maybe Michael.
That's a song called Heroin.
So much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Great
It's great to see you.
Hi, bud.
Michael will come see you to try to get a picture maybe tomorrow.
Okay. I'm home. As far as I know, I'm home tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
Always home.
Yeah. Homo. Hey.
Good to meet you. You too.
Oh, you did great.
Oh, thanks. I made it all up. It's all a lie.
You do have the gift of the gab, though.
Oh, yeah, of course. And I can't stop moving either, so I have to do something.
I know. And can Everton come down to hear this? No.
No, he went. He canceled. He canceled the day early today. He wasn't feeling good. Hey, thanks.
Betty.
Good to see ya. Say again?
David Clayton or not David Clayton, the musician's name was
Oh, Joel Scott Hill.
Joel Scott Hill.
Joel Scott Hill is the name of the musician.
What's his name?
Joel Scott Hill.
Joel Scott Hill. That sounds familiar.
He was supposedly famous.
It's available tomorrow.
He's not as famous as you, man.
Yeah, on Uranus. The musician's,
My Uranus.
the musician's name was Joel Scott Hill.
But not Gil Scott.
Was yeah, it sounds like Gil Scott Heron, but it was Joel Scott Hill.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, it just came to me.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
Wasn't he in Comsey? Joel?
Twice.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. He was part of the, the musicians that all got put out. He was buddies with Johnny Barbada, who played drums for the Airplane when they became the Stars, whatever.
Jefferson Starship.
Starship, yeah, when they became the Starship. Um,
Oh, thank you again.
sure. Where do you live now?
Are you Albion?
Where? Oh, yeah? Oh,
You know,
on Middle Ridge?
no, Albion Ridge.
Oh.
About 3 miles. Yeah. Hey, this is great again.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's always good to see you. It's great. A friendly face from
You've
the
been
past.
bringing people out of the woodworks, you know.
Good. Well, it needs to happen. What's that? Yeah, I know. I showed up at my door today. I heard the doorbell, and I said, "Who's there?" And he said, "Dickens Bascom."